Okay, so we're gonna jump right in, and we're gonna share a screen. Where are we going? Where did this go? What happened to here? What? That's what happened here. Okay, you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. And let me just put my volume up a little. Oh no, we're good. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה b'dvarei. And let's start with the blessing that we say before Torah learning. Baruch atah Adonai
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam
haolam
asher
asher
kiddushanu
tivanu
b'mitzvosav
v'tzimotza
v'tzivanu
v'tzivanu
al
al
divrei
tvei
Torah.
Torah.
So we're discussing when this abridged version, the abridged version of the Amida, the standing prayer, the Shmona Esrei, the 18 blessing prayer, or whichever name you'd like to call it by, there's an abridged version. The question is, when are you allowed to say this abridged version? So we learned that if a person is traveling and they're not able to take the time to say the full prayer, then they're allowed to say the abridged prayer. And now the Gemara is going to further restrict the occasions when one may recite the abridged prayer. Rav Nachman said that Shmuel said, one may recite grant us understanding, which is the abridged prayer, throughout the entire year, except for the evening prayer at the conclusion of Shabbos, or the conclusion of festivals, because he has to make Havdalah. So Havdalah we make over a cup of wine, which is probably what you'll usually see, but there is also a Havdalah that we make in prayer. We say a similar paragraph in our prayers. So because he has to recite the prayer of Havdalah, separating between Shabbos and the new week, in the fourth blessing, the blessing of who graciously grants knowledge, if you're going to say the abridged prayer, then you're not going to get that fourth blessing, so you're not going to be able to have the Havdalah. Therefore, you have to make the full blessing. Let me just do this, and this. Good morning, Zalman.
Good morning.
So we're continuing the discussion about the abridged prayer, and we said that you're not allowed to say that on Saturday night or at the conclusion of a festival, because you would have to make Havdalah in the fourth blessing, and if you just make one abridged blessing, you don't have the fourth blessing, so you can't say the Havdalah in prayer. Rabbi Bar Shmuel strongly objects to this. He says, one second, why can't we just create a new blessing? After reciting the three initial blessings, let us say the Havdalah as an independent fourth blessing, and then afterwards recite the abridged prayer, grant us of understanding. This is feasible. Didn't we learn in a Mishnah that Rabbi Akiva says that you could say Havdalah as an independent fourth blessing, so therefore on Saturday night you would have an extra blessing in your prayer? And Rabbi Eliezer was the one who said that you make Havdalah as part of the Thanksgiving blessing. The Gemara responds, do we practice in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva throughout the entire year regarding this issue? In other words, a person who is saying the regular prayer, he's not going to add Havdalah as a separate prayer. Therefore, Rabbi Akiva's opinion was not the accepted practice. That we will practice this way now throughout the entire year. What is the reason we don't practice in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva? Because they instituted 18 blessings. They did not institute 19. In other words, there's a set formula to the prayer. So the same way how there's a set formula to the prayer on a regular day, there's a set formula to the prayer when you're making your abridged version, which is 7 blessings. They did not institute 8. Therefore, the possibility to recite Havdalah as an independent fourth blessing is rejected. Ma'azutra strongly objects to this. He says, why can't we add Havdalah into the framework of the abridged blessing? Why can't we add this into the abridged blessing? We could say, grant us understanding, Lord our God, who distinguishes between sacred and profane. Thereby, speaking about the separation between Shabbos and the following week, without having to have an extra blessing. No response was offered to this objection, and it remains difficult why we can't add it. Rav Bevai bar Abaya said, there is another restriction that applies to the abridged prayer. One may recite, grant us understanding throughout the entire year, except during the rainy season. The rainy season is 6 months. So you could say the entire year except for in the winter, because he must recite the request for rain and the blessing of the years. Ma'azutra strongly objects to this. He says, let us include the request for rain in the framework of the abridged blessing. Just say in middle of the short prayer, you should say, satisfy us with the pastures of your land and grant dew and rain. Add extra 4 words. Grant dew and rain. The Gemara responds, that is unfeasible because you will become confused by introducing a new element to the standard formula of the blessing. In other words, if there's something that he says usually, and then in the wintertime he's going to have to remember that he's going to have to say something else, then, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to take this phone call. I'm going to be just a moment. I'm going to pause. I'm going to mute myself for just a second. I apologize. My greatest apologies, and good morning to Leib Moshe, Jonah, and Susie.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Okay, So if a person is going to change from the way that they usually pray, they're going to get mixed up. Again, this is before they had prayer books and printing presses. So the Gemara says, one second. If that's the case, that he's going to get confused, why didn't you answer that before? You said, oh, we don't have a good reason why you can't add it into the abridged blessing, but you just can't. So why didn't they use this as an answer? That you're not going to be used to adding these extra words about Havdalah separating between Shabbos and the week. So let's read that inside. If so, by introducing Havdalah in the framework of the abridged blessing in the section alluding to the blessing who graciously grants knowledge, he would also become confused. So why did the Gemara fail to respond to Mar Zutra's strong objection with regard to Havdalah in that manner? The Gemara answers, you're going to say that the cases are different because Havdalah is introducing a new element in the beginning of that extra prayer. He will not become confused because it's the first words of the prayer that he's adding something in. But here, since the request for rain is going to come in the middle of the prayer, he will become confused. Rav Ashi strongly objects to this. If so, let us say the request for rain within the framework of the abridged blessing, but we can say it at the end. In the part of who listens to prayer, we can ask God to listen to our prayer for rain as well, and that will be at the end of the blessing, so the person won't get confused with his blessings. As Rabbi Tanchum said, that Rabbi Yassi said, if someone made a mistake, one who erred, and did not mention the might of rains in the blessing of the revival of the dead, which is the second blessing, we require him to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it. However, one who erred and failed to recite the request for rain. Thank you. However, one who erred and failed to recite the request for rain in the ninth blessing of the Amidah, the blessing of the years, we do not require him to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it, because he could recite it in the last of the middle blessings, which is who listens to prayer. And one who erred and failed to recite Havdalah in the blessing of, in the correct place, which is the fourth blessing, the one thanking God for graciously granting us knowledge, we do not require him to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it, because he will say Havdalah later over a cup of wine. So we see that if a person made a mistake and didn't didn't ask for rain in the blessing of the years, he could ask for rain in the blessing of God who listens to our prayers, and consequently could introduce it at the end of the abridged blessing without becoming confused. So why did the Gemara say that you can't add it? The Gemara responds, that blessing is different. One who erred is different. Because only if a person made a mistake and didn't say it in its right place, then he has the option to ask for rain in the blessing, thanking God for listening to our prayers. Ab initio, the request for rain may not be inserted there and must be recited in the blessing of the years. And therefore, during the rainy season, we have to say the full Amidah prayer, unless, of course, one is in a place of danger. Okay, so now that we've mentioned that statement, even though it was nothing to do with the previous conversation, or not really to do with the previous conversation, the Gemara is going to discuss that for a little bit. And we'll get to the end of this discussion, we'll turn the page, and then we'll start a new conversation. The Gemara attempts to understand the matter itself. Rabbi Tanchum said that Rabbi Yassi said, one who erred, if he made a mistake, and did not mention the might of rains. The might of rains is thanking God for bringing the rain and blowing the wind. It's called the might of rains. We're going to learn later why is it called the might of rains. But we mention the rain and the might of God in his bringing the rain in the second blessing, which is the blessing of the revival of the dead. So if somebody made a mistake and didn't say it there, in the rainy season, we require him to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it. However, if somebody made a mistake and failed to recite the request for rain in the blessing of the years, we do not require him to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it, because he could recite his request for rain in the blessing who listens to prayer. In other words, there are two parts to the rain blessing, to the rain request. In the beginning, when we're saying thank you to God for all of the wonderful things, where we're mentioning God's greatness and all of the great things that he does and who he is, we mention that God is mighty and brings rain. But that's not our request for rain. Our request for rain comes in the middle of prayer and the blessing of the years. So somebody who made a mistake and didn't say it in the right place can say it in the blessing where we ask God to listen to our prayers and thank God for listening to our prayers. And one who erred and failed to recite Havdalah in the fourth blessing, the blessing of thanking God for graciously granting us knowledge, we do not require him to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it, because he could recite Havdalah over the cup of wine. We used that as a proof for something else, but now we're going back to analyze this text itself. The Gemara raised an objection based on what was taught in the Tosefta. One who erred and did not mention the might of rains in the blessing on the revival of the dead, we require him to return to the beginning of prayer and repeat it. And one who erred and failed to recite the request for rain in the blessing of the years, we do require him to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it. So here we see clearly that if somebody did not recite the request for rain in its appropriate place, he's not able to just catch up later and ask God for rain in the blessing where we ask God for all of our needs. He has to start from the whole prayer again. However, one who erred and failed to recite Havdalah in the blessing who graciously grants knowledge, we do not require him to return to the cup of wine, to the beginning of prayer and repeat it, because he could recite Havdalah over the cup of wine. So we see that this Tosefta contradicts the statement of Rabbi Tanchum with regard to one who erred and failed to recite the request for rain in the blessing of the years. The Gemara responds, this is not difficult. Why? This case, where we require him to go back to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it, refers to a situation where he is praying by himself at home. While that case, where we don't require him to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it, refers to a situation where he is praying as part of a congregation. Can anybody think of a reason why, when praying at home, you would have to repeat it, but if you're praying in the synagogue as part of the congregation, you would not have to repeat it?
Does it have anything to do with having a minion or not?
It does have to do with having a minion.
But you'd be interfering with everybody else.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you'd be holding everyone else back.
Yeah. So on your own, it's easier to do. You're not interfering with anybody.
Okay, those are both good suggestions. Let's see what the Gemara says. The Gemara raises a difficulty. When praying as part of a congregation, what is the reason he need not return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it? Because he can fulfill his obligation when he hears it from the communal prayer leader. So there's something called the repetition of the Amidah. When we finish saying our prayers, the Chazan repeats the prayer called the repetition of the Amidah. He repeats it again. And the reason for that is because there are some people who were not literate and did not have prayer books, so they were not able to pray. Therefore, the people who could pray prayed. And then afterwards, the Chazan would say a second prayer, and everyone would answer Amen and fulfill their obligation if they didn't know how to read. And we continue that practice still today. So why does he not have to repeat it? Because he could fulfill his obligation. When he hears it from the communal prayer leader in the repetition of the Amidah prayer, and therefore he doesn't have to go back. But if that's the answer, Rabbi Tanchum's formulation is imprecise. That which he said the person does not have to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it because he can recite it in the blessing who listens to prayer. It should have been because he hears it from the communal prayer leader. In other words, he didn't say that the reason why you don't go back to the beginning of the prayer is because you could listen and have in mind when the Chazan is repeating the Amida for everyone, then he should have said that. He didn't say that. He said the reason you don't have to go back to the beginning is because you could say it later in the prayer. You could say it in the blessing, thanking God for granting us our for listening to our requests. And the Tosefta said, no, that doesn't work. And you have to go back to the beginning. So we need a different answer now. So, does anyone want to give us another opportunity for why the Tosefta would say that you have to say the prayers again? And Rabbi Tanchum said you could say it later in one of the later blessings. Or let me ask the question a little bit differently. When is a case that, according to Rabbi Tanchum, who says that you're allowed to say your request for rain in one of the later blessings, when would be a time that Rabbi Tanchum would agree that the person has to start again from the beginning?
When you're
Let me
alone.
sorry, go ahead.
When you're alone, you should know. Are you saying when you're with others? When you're
So-
alone, you have to say it again.
So he seems to be saying that it doesn't matter if you're alone or in a community, there would still be this argument that Rabbi Tanchum says you could say it later, and the Tosefta, which is a very authoritative text, says that you have to start over again. So here's my question to you.
If you get interrupted while saying it,
Oh, say again if you forget.
if you get interrupted while saying prayer, then you have to start over again.
If you get interrupted while saying the prayer, you probably would have to start over again. But that's not where we're going here.
How
I'm going to
about if
ask
it
you a
rains?
question. When did he remember that he forgot?
Oh.
When did he remember that he made this mistake?
Hmm. Hmm.
After saying the Amida,
Oh, so if he only realized after he finished the Amida that he made this mistake, of course Rabbi Tanchum is going to agree that you have to start over from the beginning. Very good. Let's read that inside. Rather, both the statement of Rabbi Tanchum and the statement in the Tosefta refer to one praying even if he's praying as an individual, and it is nevertheless not difficult. This case where we do not require him to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it is referring to a case where he recalls his error before he reaches the blessing, the prayer, in which case he could ask for rain blessing.
Speaking.
Okay, very good. 29a is wrapped. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. 29b. I feel like we're moving faster now. This case, where we require him to return to the beginning of prayer and repeat it, refers to a situation where he only recalls his error after he already reached the blessing who listens to prayer, in which case the option of asking for rain in that blessing no longer exists, and he must return to the beginning of the prayer. I only now see the picture. Leib Moshe, are you able to see the page are you able to hear me now, Leib Moshe?
I can hear you, but it's weird. If you look at what my camera is displaying, it's only displaying the page that we're reading.
That's interesting because we can see your face.
You can. Okay, good.
We could. And it looks like you're cold.
Yes, I'm sitting outside and it's very cold.
I should say it looks like you were cold. I hope you're not cold with the beanie and the sweater. It looks like a nice warm sweater.
I'm freezing my tuchus off out here.
Oy vey. Yeah, I sent a picture of the 50-degree weather to my friend in Billings, Montana, and he's like, ha, it's spring. But then I said, well, listen, you decided to live in Billings, Montana. I decided to live in Florida, so I can call this cold.
It was cold for March. 50, I remember it being 50 degrees in March
Right?
before. Anyway,
Okay, so let's say the answer again. This case where we require him to return to the beginning of the prayer and repeat it is talking about a situation where he realizes his error after he reached the blessing who listens to prayer, in which case the option of asking for rain in that blessing, of course, it no longer exists. And therefore he must return to the beginning of the prayer. L'chaim, l'chaim. On a similar note, the Gemara cites an additional statement of Rabbi Tanchum. In other words, now that we're already talking about Rabbi Tanchum, let's say something else that he said. Rav Tanchum said that Rav Asi said in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, one who erred and did not mention the new moon. So there's a special prayer that we say when it's the new month, and also on festivals. There's a special prayer that we make. And good morning, Jeanette. And the prayer, let's actually look at the prayer for a moment because it's a beautiful prayer and we say it every month. And then we're going to see what happens if the person forgot the prayer. Here, where is this? No, this is the wrong one. Yalev Yava. Let's see if this is translated here. Oh, well, it's got to be somewhere here. If we can't find it soon, then I'll just okay, let's see if Wikipedia has a good job on it. Yalev Yava on Wikipedia. Let's see if they do a good translation. They don't have the placement, history, Nosach, further reading. They don't have no translation here? Come on, I can't believe that they don't have. Let's do this. They gotta have a sitter online. Online sitter with commentary. Shachrit for weekdays. Oh, here, no, sorry, the Amida. Here. Well, where's the? They don't have Yalav Yahweh in here? Okay, you know what? Let me grab a sitter from the next room. I forgot I'm in a synagogue. We have plenty of sitters. I'll be right back and I'll read you the translation. It's a beautiful prayer. And then we'll get back into it. Okay. And this prayer is recited in the middle of the last three. So again, we said that the Amida is always made up of 3 blessings in the beginning, 3 blessings at the end, and then the middle depends on what day it is. So on a regular day, we have 13 blessings in the middle, and on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, we have 1 blessing in the middle. On Rosh Hashanah, we have 3. And here is the blessing.
What page is that, Rabbi? In the center?
That'll be page 50 in the gray box. In this version of the Siddur, the blue, in this version of the Siddur, it'll be page 50 in the gray box. Our God and the God of our fathers, may their ascend, come and reach, be seen, accepted, and heard. Recalled and remembered before you, the remembrance and recollection of us, the remembrance of our fathers, the remembrance of Mashiach, son of David, your servant, the remembrances of Jerusalem, your holy city, and the remembrance of all your people, the house of Israel, for deliverance, well-being, grace, kindness, mercy, good life, and peace on this day of, so if it's Rosh Chodesh, we'll say this day of the new month, the new moon, as they're calling it here in the Talmud, or if it's on one of the holidays, we'll say the holiday. Remember us on this day, Lord our God, for good. Be mindful of us on this day for blessing. Help us on this day for good life, with the promise of deliverance and compassion. Spare us and be gracious to us, and you have mercy upon us and deliver us. For our eyes are directed to you, for you, God, are a gracious and merciful King. And that prayer is said in the end of the first of the last three blessings. Okay, so what happens if somebody forgot and didn't mention the new moon? In the blessing of the temple service, which is the 17th blessing in the Amidah, he returns to the beginning of the temple service because the last three blessings are one block. So if someone makes a mistake in those last three blessings, they return to the first of those three. So too, if he remembers during the blessing of Thanksgiving, which is the second of those three, he can return to the blessing of temple service, which is the first one. And if he remembers in the blessing grant peace, which is the third of those three, again, he returns to the temple service, the blessing of the temple service, which is the first of those three blessings, and he can start again from there and make sure to include this special blessing for the new month. However, if he remembered after he completed the Amidah prayer, he returns to the beginning of the prayer. So we see here a similar concept, that if a person forgot, well, they have a chance to make it up and to go back to the last blockage, the last bracket. But if they only remember when it's too late, once they finish the entire prayer, then they have to start all over again. Rav Papa, the son of Rav Ada bar Ava, said that, which we said that if he already finished the Amidah prayer, he returns to the beginning. We only said that in a case where he already moved his feet from where he stood in prayer. However, if he did not yet move his feet, he need only return to the blessing of the temple service and include the addition for the new moon therein. He said to him, from where did you derive this halacha? From where did you learn that if he didn't move his feet yet, even if he finished his prayer, but he didn't yet move his feet, that he could still go back? And he doesn't have to start his prayers again. He said to him, my father, my teacher, told it to me, and my father, my teacher, heard it from Rav. On a similar note, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said that which we said that if he already moved his feet, he returns to the beginning. We only said that in a case where he is unaccustomed to reciting additional supplications after his prayer. However, if he is accustomed to reciting supplications after his prayer, and while reciting these things that he recites after every prayer, even though he finished the official prayer, but he's in the middle of reciting his own personal prayer that he says at the end, and that was when he remembered that he omitted the mention of the new moon from his prayer, he need only to return to the blessings of the temple service, which is the first of those last three blessings, and he includes the addition for the new moon therein, because it's not considered as if he has finished praying, because he's saying the prayers that he always includes in his prayers. Some say that what Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said is the following: that which we said that if he did not yet move his feet, he only needs to return to the blessing of the temple service. We only said that in a case where he is accustomed to reciting additional supplications after his prayer. However, if he is unaccustomed to reciting supplications after his prayer, he must return to the beginning of his prayer, as it is considered as if he already completed his prayers. The same thing the other way around. Back to the Mishnah. One of the cryptic things that we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer said, one whose prayer is fixed, his prayer is not a supplication. What does that mean? So the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of fixed in this context? Rav Yaakov Bar Idi said that Rabbi Oshaya said, it means, anyone for whom his prayer is like a burden upon him, for which he seeks to be quickly unburdened. In other words, a person comes to prayer and rushes through it trying to get out of it. The rabbis say this refers to anyone who does not recite prayer in the language of supplication, but as standardized recitation without emotion. So if you're reading the words just to read the words, but you don't actually feel it or think about it. Rabbi and Rav Yosef both said it refers to anyone unable to introduce a novel element, i.e., something personal, reflecting his personal needs to his prayer and only recites the standard formula. So I have three opinions. What does it mean to have a fixed prayer? Rabbi Zeira said, I could introduce a novel element in every prayer, but I'm afraid perhaps I will become confused. Consequently, there is no room to require the masses to introduce novel elements into their prayers. The brothers, Abaye bar Ovin and Rabbi Hanina bar Ovin, were two brothers. Their father was Ovin, not to be confused with the appliance. Both said, one whose prayer is fixed refers to anyone who does not make the effort to pray with the reddening of the sun just after sunrise, for the morning prayer, and just before sunset, which is for the afternoon prayer, which are auspicious times for prayer. Because Rabbi Chia bar Abba said that Rabbi Yochanan said, it is a mitzvah to pray with the reddening of the sun. And Rabbi Zera said, what verse do we have that alludes to this? So they have a verse from Psalms, let them fear you with the sun and before the moon, generation after generation. Prayer, which is a manifestation of the fear of God, should be undertaken adjacent to sunrise and sunset. Nevertheless, in the West, in Eretz Yisrael, they cursed one who prays the afternoon prayer with the reddening of the sun adjacent to sunset. And what is the reason for that? Because he's pushing it off to the last minute, he will be preoccupied with something and will become confused about the hour, and the time for prayer will pass. We learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehoshua said, one who is walking in a place of danger recites a brief prayer. And we discussed what the brief prayer was, but we said that God should be with the people at every Parshat HaIbor. So the question is, what does it mean? You could loosely translate it as every crossroads. But what are we talking about and why is that added in the prayer? The Gemara asks, what is this meaning of the Parshat HaIbor? So Rav Chisda said that Mar Ukva said, this can be interpreted in a manner underscoring two connotations of the term Ibor. Ibor could mean anger, and Ibor could mean pregnancy. So he says, even at a time when you are filled with anger towards them, how full? As full as a pregnant woman who is about to give birth. May all their needs be before you. In other words, even when God is full of anger towards us, he should still grant us all of our needs. Some say a different version of what Rav Chisda said, that Mar Ukva said that even when they violate Oivrim, the commandments of the Torah, may all their needs be before you. So that formula for the prayer recited in places of danger is cited in the Mishnah. There are additional formulas recited in the Tosefta, and let's see what those additional formulas for short blessings are, short prayers. The sages taught, one who walks in a place where there are groups of wild beasts and robbers recites an abbreviated prayer. Which is an abbreviated prayer? Rabbi Eliezer says, this one is very short. Carry out your will in the heavens above, and give peace of mind to those who fear you below, and perform that which is good in your eyes. Blessed are you, the Lord, who listens to prayer. Rabbi Yehoshua says that he says something else. Hear the cry of your nation Israel, and quickly fulfill their request. Blessed are you, Lord, who listens to prayer. Rabbi Elazar, the son of Tzadok, said that what is the small prayer that you make? Hear the shout of your nation Israel, and quickly fulfill their request. Blessed are you, Lord, who listens to prayer. Acherim say, Acher means others, which refers to Rabbi Meir, and eventually we'll learn the story of why Rabbi Meir was referred to as others. The needs of your nation Israel are many, and their intelligence is limited, and consequently they are unable to effectively articulate their thoughts in prayer. So may it be your will, Lord our God, to provide each of and every one with his necessary sustenance, and to each and every body all that it lacks. Blessed are you, Lord, who listens to prayer. Rav Huna said the halacha with regard to which version of the prayer a person should recite if they're in a place of danger is in accordance with the opinion of Acherim, which is that last one that we read. The needs of your nation Israel are many, and their intelligence is limited. May it be your will, Lord our God, to provide each and every one with his necessary sustenance, and to each and every body all that it lacks. Blessed are you, Lord, who listens to prayer. On the topic of prayers recited while traveling and in times of danger, the Gemara discusses the traveler's prayer. When he appeared to him, when who appeared to who? Elijah the prophet appeared to Rav Yehuda, the brother of Rav Salah Hasidah. And he said to him, do not get angry and you will not sin. Do not get drunk and you will not sin. And when you set out on a journey, consult with your Creator and then set out. The Gemara asks, what is the meaning of consult with your Creator and then set out? Rabbi Yaakov said, Rav Chisda said, that is the traveler's prayer. And Rabbi Yaakov said that Rabbi Chisda said, it is not only good advice, but established halacha that anyone who sets out on a journey must recite the traveler's prayer prior to embarking on their journey. And what is the traveler's prayer? The Gemara answers, may it be your will, Lord my God, to lead me, direct my steps to peace, and guide me to peace, and rescue me from the hands of any enemy or ambush along the way, and send blessing to the work of my hands, and let me find grace, kindness, and compassion in your eyes, and in the eyes of all who see me. Blessed are you, Lord, who hears prayer. That is the traveler's prayer. Abaya said, at old times, oh wow, this must have been a short page. Look at us, 2 pages in one day. Let's give a round of applause. We have finished page 29 today. On to 30. At all times, a person should associate himself with the congregation and should not pray for himself alone. So he shouldn't just say, God save me, protect me, help me. Rather, he should say it in the plural. Include yourself with the rest of the congregation and say, may it be your will, Lord our God, that you lead us to peace, etc., in the plural. The Gemara discusses specific details pertaining to this traveler's prayer. When are you supposed to make this prayer? Rav Yaakov said that Rav Chisda said, from when one sets out on his journey and not before you set out on your journey. How long must one's planned journey be in order to require him to recite this prayer? Rabbi Yaakov said that Rav Chisda said at least a parasang, which is approximately 4 kilometers, which is about 2 miles. How does he recite this prayer? Rav Chisda said only while standing in one place. Rav Shesha says even if you're sitting or if you're walking. The accepted practice today among Chabad Hasidim is that if you're on an airplane, the appropriate time to say this prayer is while the engines are revving up in preparation for takeoff. The Gemara relates.
So it's not every time you get in your car and you know you're going more than 2 miles.
Oh, that's a good question. So it's not every time you're getting in your car. It's only if you're getting in your car to drive out of the city. So once you get about 2 miles out of the city, that is when is the right time to say this prayer.
It is.
So if you're driving to South Carolina, then you would say this prayer because at a certain point, I mean, probably
Sure.
not before the Palm Beaches because I think there's like one continuous city all the way up. But once you get out into the bush and the houses are more than, I forget the exact distance, but the houses are not close together anymore. At that point is when you would say this this prayer.
There you go. Yeah.
The Gemara relates, you know what, we'll keep the story for next week. It's 11:15. God bless you all. And yes,
Is your wife coming on at 11:30?
yes. So Nachama is going to be giving a class for women about Purim. At 11:30, it's going to be the same link. So,
Now, let me ask, it's for women. What do you consider your class? Is your class really for men or for both?
this class is for everyone, and Nechama will be giving classes for everyone as well, but today's class is just for women.
Okay. All righty.
Okay, so Rita, great to see you. Have a wonderful day. Zalman,
Thank
great
you.
to see you. Oh, tomorrow. Tomorrow is a beautiful class about Purim. And the title is, let me read it so that I get it right. The Purim roller coaster. Are we, where is this? The Purim roller coaster. The dramatic journey of the Jewish people in the Purim story, rising to the heights of power and influence, only to become targets of destruction. What sparked this shocking reversal of fortune? Join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. to find out more. Wishing you all a wonderful day. Thank you, Rachalea. Thank you, Zalman. Thank you, Leib Moshe. Great to see you, Jeanette. Great to see you, Joan and Susie. And again, Nechama's class for women is going to be at 11:30 in about just less than 15 minutes. God bless you all and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.